the advisor asks the young gentleman when he will introduce his new daughter-in-law. The young gentleman listens thoughtfully because the candidates from the nobility are no longer suitable in age. The man insists that delay will create problems with the choice of an heir. The gentleman's hand tightens at the mention of the late Lady Ariadne. He sharply asks why he is raising this issue since the decision was his. The owner looks at him suspiciously, accusing the advisor of personal motives. The advisor tries to object, but the gentleman interrupts him, demanding that he leave. An icy stare and the command, "Get out," leave no doubt about his anger. The men present retreat in horror under his angry onslaught. He wearily calls the meeting to an end as the counselors hurriedly leave the room. The master's hand taps the table, the pressure from the elders grows unbearably. He frowns, fearing that the advice will make his bride too arrogant. Where can you find one who doesn't have influential patrons behind her? Suddenly, someone roughly kicks the little white animal, calling it an albino. The maids scream indignantly, how dare he not notice them? The frightened little animal with the broom timidly babbles an apology, not understanding the reason. The head of the maids orders him to clean not here, but in the library. Threatening to deprive food, she points to an ominous door that exudes danger. The little white animal obediently trudges towards the terrible place, not daring to disobey. The maids whisper maliciously behind his back because he fell into their trap. The maids gloat, not knowing that the little animal hears everything and is seething with anger. He clutches his chest with his paw, realizing the trap, but is forced to remain silent. The reason for his suffering is that he is an albino, doomed to humiliation. In this world, the beastmen possess the power of Escalation, which manifests itself in different ways. Some, like this pink-eared priestess, wield sacred powers. The white animal envies them, because albinos are almost devoid of Escalation and human appearance. He is shivering with cold and despair, curled up on the stone floor. The little animal cries out in despair, asking why his rebirth is so terrible. It turns out that he ended up in this world in the middle of the plot of a famous novel. The novel tells the story of a Korean actress, Lahin, who, by God's mistake, became a saint in another world. Lahin falls in love with the world's greatest dark mage, Caraxes Drivelane. For the sake of his heart, she offers the sacred relic of the church, bones. But the magician, faithful to his vow of celibacy, rejects her, and Lakin falls in despair. They say that the anger of a rejected woman can freeze even the summer heat. And Lakin really does turn the world into a kingdom of eternal, merciless winter. The lands are withering, and the holy and magic empires begin a war for resources. It is during this dark period that our hero is reborn into the world of the novel. Fate throws him as a servant in the mansion of the main villain, Caraxes. Having acquired a body, he immediately finds himself in danger, floundering in a bucket of water. However, in his past life, all that awaited him was loneliness at the dinner table. In his past life, all that awaited him was a modest dinner in complete solitude. There was not a single happy moment in his previous life. But here at least he will not starve, clinging to hope. Little Dumby cheers himself up as he enters the huge, dark library. Suddenly, a menacing voice is heard asking who dared to enter without permission. The little animal covers its mouth in fear, sensing someone's powerful presence. A sudden surge of pheromones envelops him, leaving him puzzled. The owner of the library repeats that entry here is prohibited. His aura is oppressive. A figure with blue-black hair appears before the animal. The stranger's piercing turquoise eyes glow in the semi-darkness. Danby realizes in horror that in front of him is the owner of the mansion, a saber-toothed tiger beast man. The owner disgustedly lifts the animal by the scruff of the neck, asking what the child is doing here. The baby babbles that he is a servant, but his master is surprised by his ability to speak in animal form. The man looks at Danby with doubt, since this area is closed for cleaning. The little animal admits that he was sent by other servants, and the owner already suspects that he is being bullied. The owner asks where the baby's family is, but he replies that they are not there. The next question is about a name, but the poor animal doesn't have that either. The man persistently asks about relatives or friends, and Danby thinks that he is being made fun of. "Nobody," the little animal whispers, and a sly smile appears on the owner's face. A child without patrons is ideal. "Poor child. Do you want me to take you in?" he suddenly offers, shocking Danby. "You will become the daughter-in-law of our family," the owner says with a smile, holding the animal. He repeats the condition, to become a daughter-in-law, and Danby freezes in bewilderment. Not a daughter-in-law? The stunned little boy asks again, not believing his ears. The owner explains that in the saber-toothed tiger clan, daughter-in-law is an important position. Danby, still in the man's arms, timidly suggests, "Could it be Songhami? That's me?" "Yes, we will see each other often now," the owner confirms, and the little animal trembles. "Caraxes?" The little boy decides to ask the name of his new patron. "Caraxes Driveline Lushan," the man introduces himself, holding a glowing object and thanking Lahin. Danby is horrified. It's that same Caraxes, the villain of the century, who used Lahin. "No! Why would such a person make me his daughter-in-law?" The little animal faints from shock. Waking up, Danby wonders, will my life get better this time? There is a tradition in the Drivlane clan. The future daughter-in-law lives with the heirs of the head from a young age. As a result, she marries the heir who awakened the dominant pheromone, thus determining the head of the family. But there's one problem. An alarming thought flashes through my mind, hinting at a catch. The Drivlane heirs, awakening the dominant pheromone, are shown in their beast forms. There are usually 2 or 3 such heirs, and they begin to compete with each other for the daughter-in-law. Danby realizes the importance of his position, the best in all his past lives, but he is tormented by one problem. The one who made the offer is Caraxes, the kid thinks, suspecting a trap. With hope in her eyes, Danby asks, "So, what's so good about being a daughter-in-law?" "You will eat well and live well," Caraxes replies, showing off a luxurious mansion, and Danby regrets the question. Danby wonders why Caraxes needed to make him such an offer. Caraxes explains that they needed a good child uncorrupted by the elder's influence, and Danby was perfect. The owner asks if there are any more questions, and Danby hesitates. The kid decides to ask another question, and Caraxes, holding him, listens attentively. "Will I become a contract daughter-in-law?" Danby asks hopefully, looking at the owner. The little animal is already making plans. Let Rachel take care of love affairs, and he will save money just in case. Caraxes looks at Danby with a barely noticeable sly grin. "Who knows?" the man answers mysteriously, and Danby realizes it's a trap. Caraxes calls out to Nina, and the red-haired maid immediately appears with a serious look. Nina looks at the animal with a threatening look, holding something that looks like a syringe in her hands, and Danby is finally convinced. It's a trap. Caraxes hands the animal over to Nina, declaring her his future daughter-in-law, and asks her to take good care of her. The owner tells her to call her Sobol for now, and most importantly, to wash and feed her. Nina, the cheetah beastman, introduces herself and promises to serve little Sable loyally. The maid's menacing animal form appears behind her, and Danby realizes that she is scary, and he is only 1 bite away. Nina offers to help with the bath first, and Danby is terrified of getting eaten. Baby Sable ends up in soapy water, and Nina carefully washes him. Danby notices that the maid has been acting very quiet and thoughtful from the very beginning. The little animal suggests that Nina must be upset by her sudden assignment to serve an albino. Nina asks Mrs. Sobol why she is suddenly behaving so strangely. Danby babbles an apology in embarrassment, wondering if she was embarrassed that he was suddenly an albino. Nina looks intently at the animal, addressing Mrs. Sable. Danby flinches as a gentle hand begins to wash him, causing him mixed feelings. The baby wriggles in the water, screaming that it tickles and asking Nina to stop. The maid asks Mrs. Sobol not to talk nonsense because it is an honor for her to serve such a wonderful person. Nina admits that this is the first time she has seen a speaker in animal form, calling Danby very smart. She explains that beastmen are usually unable to speak in beast form due to the structure of their mouths, and Danby is surprised. The little animal shyly thanks Nina. He is pleased to hear praise addressed to him. Continuing to wash, Nina adds that Mrs. Sobol is also very sweet. Suddenly, Nina, in her chibi animal form, declares that Danby wants to be eaten, and he screams in horror. A frightened Danby jumps out of the bath, and Nina apologizes and offers to dry his fur. Nina reassures Danby, telling her not to worry and to get a good night's sleep. The baby is brought into a luxurious room where a fire crackles comfortably in the fireplace. Nina carefully places the animal on a huge, soft bed. Danby, stretched out on the bed, breathes a sigh of relief. What a tiring day. He crawls across the silk sheets, remembering how much has happened today. The little animal blissfully sprawls on the pillow, thinking how long it has been since he slept in a real bed. Danby looks at the luxurious chandelier, thinking that he has a chance, but it is too early to relax. He realizes that he is in the villain's mansion, and there is still a family gathering ahead. Caraxus' words about tomorrow's meeting surface, and Danby is tormented. Will they accept him, an albino? He decides to try his best, but just in case, he is already planning to save money for an escape. Danby muses that although he cannot take human form, his ability to speak is rare, and Caraxus thinks of him as an ordinary girl. The kid hopes that knowing the plot will help him avoid being expelled right away. From tomorrow, he will begin to slowly save money, choosing small and easy values. The little animal, lying in bed, firmly decides not to wander around like a possessed nomad anymore. Looking out the window, Danby vows to survive as long as possible this time. For breakfast, Nina prepared bread with goat cheese, and there is a bottle and a mug of milk nearby. The delicious buns are topped with melted cheese, and the milk is served warm. Danby is delighted with the food, noting that the treatment is much better than when he was a servant. While eating his breakfast, the baby thinks that it is the best food, and Caraxus and Nina watch him. The little animal blissfully closes its eyes, enjoying every piece. It's simply heaven. Caraxus looks at Danby thoughtfully, thinking about something. The owner corrects the animal, advising him not to dip the bun so as not to spoil the taste. Danby is surprised. He had no idea that Caraxus had such a caring side. The kid remembers that Leighon from the novel fell in love with this face while Caraxus wipes his hand. But Danby firmly decides not to be deceived, remembering the true nature of the owner in the form of formidable tigers. In the original story, Caraxus was a madman who created armies from the dead and hunted down heirs. Suddenly, Caraxus mentions the name, and Danby flinches in surprise. According to the documents, the animal's name is Flea, and Danby is surprised it even had a name. Caraxus reports that he registered it as Florin because Flea sounds weird, and Danby is confused. The little animal reflects on how he finally got a name after 7 reincarnations, continuing to eat the bun. Danby, clutching a bun, thinks that the name Florin is quite cute. Caraxus pokes at the little creature, calling it a photo dollar and wondering why it's so wrinkled. The kid justifies himself by saying that meat is not easy to get, and he is happy even with such food. The owner snaps his fingers as if making a decision. Caraxus tells the little beast to eat at least this to gain weight. A delicious cookie appears in front of Danby, and he is surprised. The little animal remembers how long it has been since he ate desserts, because in past lives this was impossible. With tears in her eyes, Danby clutches the huge cookie, not believing her luck. Caraxus promises to give more if the baby asks, and Danby is amazed by such kindness. The owner says he has something to tell her while Danby is eating, and more cookies fall onto the plate. Caraxus announces that he plans to take Danby to a family gathering today. Taken by surprise, the little animal drops the cookie and asks again, "Family? Meeting?" Danby remembers that he is here on the condition that he becomes his daughter-in-law. In the novel, important matters of the Driveline family were decided at such meetings, including his adoption. While squeezing the cookie, the baby worries that if he doesn't prove the benefit, he will lose his chance. Caraxus and Nina notice how Danby froze, gnawing on a treat. The owner advises not to worry about the old men, because the rewards for their heads are lower than for his. Caraxus offers Danby to come out when he is ready, but the little animal hesitates. Caraxus's confident, slightly mocking gaze does not bode well. Danby reaches for another cookie, muttering, "This is," when his owner asks what's wrong. Danby, with a cookie in his paws, thinks he's eaten too much. The baby holds out a cookie to Nina, offering her a treat. The little animal, embarrassed, decides to offer the cookie to Caraxus, who has difficulty pronouncing his name. Danby speculates that this is a return gift for the room and food, asking her to take care of him. The kid understands that Caraxus is his only support, and he needs to make a good impression. The owner asks with a grin if this is a bribe. Danby babbles sheepishly that this is not entirely true, and Caraxus accepts the treat with a smile. Caraxus notes to himself that the little animal was initially shackled, but now it has learned to think. The owner, taking the cookies, adds that Danby has become quite brave. Caraxus wonders with interest what the baby will show at the family gathering. Danby, in Caraxus's pocket, hears shouts of "Albino is absurd," and is lost in thought. The kid admits to himself that his head is completely empty right now. The bearded man shouts at Caraxus, demanding that he come to his senses and remember the other candidates. Danby expected resistance, but he didn't think his relatives would be so angry. The little animal notices empty chairs nearby. It seems they really are hated. Caraxes thinks with a slight grin that he didn't want to do this in front of the child, but the owner, exuding a threat, asks why the puppies are barking so loudly outside their kennel. The three men stutter in horror, while Danby admires the strength of the official villain. The kid looks out of his pocket, wondering where the head of the family is at such a moment. Danby sees that the seats of the head of the family and the young master are empty. Suddenly a voice is heard. The 18th head of the Drive Lane family has arrived. Everyone be quiet. Danby is shocked. Did someone just tell them to shut up? The head of the family's assistant, Reborn, with an owl on his shoulder, demands that the air not be polluted. Reborn sprays pheromone spray, clearing the way for the head of the family. Caraxes explains that this fanatic is his father's assistant, and Danby wonders what kind of person the leader is. An older man with a gray beard walks in, asking how everyone is doing. One of the relatives reproaches Caraxes for not greeting his father, to which Caraxes replies, "It is my choice." Caraxes brazenly states that he will continue to act like this until he gets tired of it, shocking Danby. The head of the family, who looks like a mafia boss and has a tiger-like aura, accuses Caraxes of being narrow-minded. Danby is horrified and thinks, is this the head of the family or a crime boss? The head of the family leans towards Caraxes, and Danby yelps when she notices his gaze. Caraxes' father asks Reborn what kind of animal his son has, and he suggests that it is an albino marten. Caraxes asks his father to ignore him, calling Danby his nephew's daughter-in-law, but he only becomes more interested. Danby, hiding from fear, feels like he's about to suffocate. The baby tries to hide completely in Caraxes' clothes, showing only his fluffy tail. The menacing gaze of the head of the Drive Lane family makes Danby squeal in horror. A trembling Danby begs for mercy as the head of the family approaches him. The head of the family and Reborn can hardly contain their laughter as they look at the frightened little animal. Caraxes' father grins and says, "Well, fine," and Reborn suggests starting the meeting, surprising Danby. Danby, his eyes shining, doesn't believe it. Did those two just smile at him? Danby decides that if he plays things right, the situation will turn out in his favor. The bearded man shouts again, begging the head of the family to listen. Caraxes wants an albino as a wife. The kid frowns as he listens to the cries of unknown origin and thinks how much he hates albinos. The head of the family interrupts his relative's tirade about future generations of albinos with a stern "enough." Caraxes' father coldly states that he has never given anyone permission to speak. A tense silence reigns in the room. All eyes are directed at the head of the family. The head of Drivlane turns to Caraxes, suggesting that his son has a well-thought-out plan. Caraxes calmly replies that he would prefer not to say, much to his relative's indignation. The angry man lashes out at Caraxes, who remains calm. Caraxes snaps his fingers, sarcastically thinking that this barking could make you go deaf. Suddenly, the relative starts cooing at Danby, calling him sweet and well-mannered, which puzzles the little boy. The two men who had just been screaming now stand there in complete bewilderment and shock. Caraxes calmly notes that swearing is harmful to the child and asks them to restrain themselves. Danby understands whose doing this is. The owner, with a piercing look, adds that the baby is not connected to any schools, regions, or bribes. Unlike the others, Danby is a pure child with no support, and Caraxes considers this to be reason enough. Relatives object that they proposed candidates for the benefit of Drivlane, especially after the death of Lady Ariadne. Caraxes' eyes flash dangerously. "Have you forgotten my warning not to mention your sister's name?" Close-up of his words. "This is your last warning. If you do it again, you will regret it." The three men freeze in horror at his cold threat. Danby, looking at the reaction, understands that it's all because of Ariadne's name, because this is happening after her death. Danby understands that this place of heir was intended for Ariadne. Ariadne Hera Drivelane is the sister of Caraxes, a genius with dominant pheromones. Having inherited the title, she shone in everything and was expected to become the next chapter, breaking with tradition. But Ariadne, a skilled warrior, died tragically in the war. Danby sadly thinks that Caraxes misses his sister terribly, which is why he left the place of heir empty. Suddenly, Caraxes declares that since we are talking about the heir, he has something to say. He announces with a smile that if Danby becomes his daughter-in-law, as his father always wanted, he will immediately accept the title of heir. Relatives are stunned by such an unexpected statement. Danby screams in horror. Did Caraxes really go so far just to make him his daughter-in-law? Caraxes, petting Danby, boasts, Isn't our daughter-in-law amazing to be able to get me to accept the title? The relative is indignant, but this can hardly be called an ability. And before, Caraxes retorts with a grin, didn't you say that ability is what matters? The head of the family's son, holding Danby, adds, since you care so much about the family, I'm sure you will agree. Danby realizes that Caraxes was not joking. He warned them and seriously intends to make him his daughter-in-law. The head of the family looks at Danby with interest, who flinches. What? Why is he looking at me like that? Caraxes' father remarks, it seems my son loves you very much, and Danby panics, not knowing what to answer. The head of the family is in thought. My son has finally agreed to become the heir. I can't just refuse him. Danby understands that Caraxes' father is testing him in this way, expecting him to prove himself. The kid decides, well, from now on I have to present myself well. It's the only way to survive here. Danby, with a bow on his head, is full of determination. Operation Eat Well and Live Like the Drivlane's Daughter-in-Law begins. Danby, not wanting to drag things out, asks everyone for a moment of attention. The baby tells Caraxes' father that he has a hidden talent, which intrigues the head of the family. With a serious look, Danby prepares to reveal his trump card. His eyes sparkle with determination. Now he will surprise everyone. A small paw rises, heralding an important announcement. Trust me and buy the land, Danby proclaims confidently. Silence reigns in the room. Everyone is stunned by such unexpected advice from the little animal. Caraxes' father clarifies, so you're suggesting to buy land? Danby confirms hotly. The head of the family smiles, finding the animal funny, but Danby understands that he is not being taken seriously. Then the kid turns to Rafirin and asks if he has a card by any chance. Rafirin helpfully unfolds the map at Danby's request, who thanks him. The baby points with his paw to a certain area of the map, addressing the head of the family. Sir, buy this land. Caraxes' father recognizes the area. This is Luxoria, isn't it? The head of the family wonders why this particular land, since it does not represent much value. Danby recalls that this land was once fertile and famous for its wheat, and even one of the Lahin heirs suggested using it. The animal confidently declares that wheat grows well here, and although the ground is frozen now, it will soon become useful. Because spring is coming, Danby announces, shocking the three men. Caraxes asks incredulously, What? Spring is coming? It can't be! The relative jumps up, shouting that this is a lie, because Danby was born after the saint's atrocities and cannot know what spring is. The head of the family, narrowing his eyes, sternly asks Danby if he really knows what spring is. Danby explains enthusiastically, when spring comes, the snow will melt and you can farm again. The head of the family asks doubtfully, and how can you be so sure? Danby stutters. The kid thinks in a panic, what should I do? I didn't think that far ahead. I can't say that this is from a novel. Danby mentally begs for help, and Caraxes watches him with curiosity. Caraxes chuckles to himself. She improvised well, but it seems that this is her limit. Maybe I should help and tease them a little. Suddenly, Caraxes declares, you know she might have the gift of clairvoyance. Caraxes' father asks again in surprise, what do you mean? Danby listens attentively. Caraxes continues with a mysterious smile. Actually, there is something I haven't told you yet. This child is actually holy, declares Caraxes, plunging the three relatives into deep shock. The head of the Drivelane family was also stunned, his eyes wide in surprise. Danby is completely horrified by Caraxes' statement, not believing his ears. The entire Drivelane mansion seemed to shudder at the news. What? The kid mentally shouts to Caraxes, I asked you to help, not make the situation worse. Chaos reigned in the conference room. Some relatives were outraged. What nonsense! A saint? Others, more gullible, actually believed that Danby was a saint. Because of this, Danby has been inundated with an incredible amount of gifts every day for the past week. The maid Florin can barely cope with the offerings, and Danby no longer knows where to put them. Danby blames everything on Caraxes, who continues to call her a saint with a satisfied grin. The kid panics. What was he thinking, lying like that? What if someone finds out the truth? Danby laments. I thought he at least had some kind of plan, but... Caraxes calmly advises Danby to pretend, and the baby screams after him in despair. Danby is left alone, annoyed and with a broken lollipop. Caraxes left without saying another word. The maid notices Danby's depressed state, but he angrily denies being bored, saying he is simply upset. Nina assumes that Dumby is tired from the snowstorm and offers to play, but the baby politely declines. Dumby admires Lady Florin's thoughtfulness, remembering that Nina is Caraxes's only maid. The kid remembers his initial indignation. How can one person be exploited like this? But after learning Nina's full story, Dumby was impressed. It turns out she was a mercenary sent to kill Caraxes. Nina's sweet appearance as a maid hides her dangerous past. Instead of killing her, Caraxes captured her and imposed a 10-year contract of forced servitude. Dumby admires Caraxes's genius, wondering how he could do something similar to survive. Dumby, lying on his back, asks Nina to bring him a sketchbook. Nina immediately responds, promising to fulfill the request immediately. The maid hands the baby an album and some crayons, and Dumby thanks him politely. The little animal is resolutely clutching the chalk. It's time to make a plan for your comfortable future. Dumby ponders. If she pretends to be a saint and becomes the official daughter-in-law, one of the heirs will become his husband. He draws a diagram. All the heirs will still be obsessed with Locken, so it doesn't matter who she marries. The kid imagines himself under the rubble. He needs to prevent the collapse of the drive lanes so as not to end up on the street. First, Dumby will create a solid foundation independent of her husband and try to soften the family's fall. He recalls the tragic essence of the novel. In order to save the drive lanes, it is necessary to eliminate the root cause of their death. The main plotline was Lahaina healing the hero's mental trauma. Dumby decides to prevent their suffering. Dumby begins his plan with a list of the main male characters, starting with Dante, Ariadne's only direct heir. Second on the list is Yuri, Ariadne's youngest son, in whose veins flows the blood of imperial mages. The third candidate is Gerd, not Ariadne's son, but a member of the royal family of Lycanvium. The kid clutches the crayon with determination, realizing that Locken is still sealed, and this is his chance to influence the heroes as children. Dumby proudly shows off his sketchbook, exclaiming, "Everything is ready." The rescue plan is made. His strategy includes becoming the Drivlane's daughter-in-law, secretly creating a faction, befriending the family, and saving the heroes before the Locken arrive. The little animal happily rolls among the gifts, confident in the success of his cunning plan. However, Dumby immediately thinks that not everything is going according to plan, and he needs to be prepared for the worst. To get some energy before the hard times, the kid decides to eat some candy first to get a boost of energy. Savoring the sweetness, Dumby thinks that playing a fake saint has its pleasant moments and wishes it could last forever. Dumby reflects that in the spring his position will be strengthened, and he will be able to sell his knowledge from the novel. The baby is eagerly awaiting spring, when suddenly there is a knock at the door. Nina turns around in surprise, and Dumby wonders who could have come. A voice behind the door announces that Lord Refirin is asking for Lady Florin to come to him. Dumby is shocked. There is a man with blonde hair standing behind the door, persistently calling for Lady Florin. The door swings open and the visitor impatiently asks again, "Yes?" Nina holds Dumby in her arms and he feels his whole body screaming with tension. A man who introduces himself as Refirin offers to walk Dumby, who confidently pokes him in the glasses. Dumby is jubilant. He is sure that spring has finally arrived. The little animal is full of determination. It's time to seriously start selling information about the Holy Empire. Lord Refirin's assistant enthusiastically reports, "My lord, everything is as she said." In snowy Luxoria, the first green shoots actually appeared, confirming the prediction. At the table, the advisors rejoice. The purchase of land in Luxoria turned out to be an incredibly profitable investment. Lord Refirin, the head of the family, listens thoughtfully, his face unreadable. Suddenly, the lord turns around to the voice behind the door. "My lord, I'm here. May I come in?" Refirin Sr. allows the newcomer to approach, expecting news. This is Refirin Jr. He is holding Dumby nervously, afraid to drop the saint. Dumby, beaming with joy, greets Lord Refirin Sr. "How are you?" The head of the family replies that everything is fine, and asks with a smile what the animal's name is. Florin. Lord Refirin picks up Dumby, promising to remember his name, and the baby notices his unusual enthusiasm. Lord Refirin offers Dumby some milk, which he readily accepts. The baby tries to drink from a huge cup, remembering that Nina gave him smaller ones. Refirin Sr. apologizes and promises to order dishes of the right size for Dumby, which makes the animal very happy. The advisors nod with smiles, because how can one not take care of the treasure of their home? Danby notices that everyone is looking at him with such warmth, especially the head of the family. The little animal enjoys the moment, rejoicing in the success of his role as a false saint. Lord Refirin explains that he called Danby because of the sprouts in Luxoria, confirming his prediction. The head of the family wants to ask the saint more about the lands of Luxoria, and Danby enthusiastically agrees. Refirin reports that they bought up the entire region cheaply in the name of the drive lanes, as Danby advised. The Lord wonders if all the purchased land can be converted into farmland, which puzzles Danby. Danby is in a panic. Should they plow the fields? No, there is a way to instantly inflate the price of land. The baby looks up thoughtfully, clearly puzzled by the Lord's proposal. Lord Refirin smiles slyly, and Danby understands that this is a test. The animal realizes that this whole situation is a test of his abilities. Danby is confident that Lord Refirin is testing him and he cannot fail. The kid decisively declares that he has another, more profitable idea. Lord Refirin looks at Danby with interest, waiting for his proposal. Danby admits that the Lord's idea is not bad, but he has his own special opinion. The little animal suggests putting the land up for auction and selling it to the imperial family for a huge amount of money. In Luxoria, shoots have actually appeared, proof of the spring that will change everything. Danby recalls that in the novel, these shoots shook both empires and the price of Luxoria skyrocketed. The kid explains that cultivating the land themselves would mean raising rumors about the drive lane's monopoly on the spring. Besides, Luxoria's harvest won't feed the entire magic empire, so that's not an option. Danby suggests, while everyone is just looking, we need to sell the land at an incredibly high price. Lord Refirin is impressed by the idea of selling the land at such a high price that everyone will gasp, and wonders how Danby came up with the idea. The animal modestly replies that his brain is simply forced to work quickly. After all, Danby understands, the profit of the drive lanes is also his own benefit. He remembers that even though the drive lanes are the villains in the novel, they reward success generously, so the more expensive the sale, the bigger his share. Deciding to strike while the iron is hot, Danby tells the Lord that he has something else. Lord Refirin asks again in surprise about the new information, and Danby happily confirms. Lord Refirin listens thoughtfully, and Danby is pleased. Now his words are being heeded. The little animal reminds of his prediction of spring, and the Lord confirms the emergence of sprouts in Luxoria. Danby is adamant that Luxoria must be sold as soon as possible. Refirin Jr. anticipates the fury of the imperial family, who will have to fork out money, and Danby shares his delight. The advisors laugh maliciously, and Danby, succumbing to the general mood, also lets out a villainous laugh. The kid is surprised to realize that he laughed like a villain and wonders why he finds it so easy to find a common language with them. The advisors are looking forward to the Emperor's priceless reaction, and Danby believes that victory is victory. However, Danby announces that his plan is not yet finished, and approaches the Lord with a new idea. The little animal asks if the drive lanes have any seeds and fertilizer, which surprises the head of the family. Understanding flashes in Lord Refirin's eyes. He has just had a clue. Danby confirms, once spring comes everywhere, the drive lanes will sell their seeds and fertilizers. Lord Refirin understands that Danby is proposing to take over the seed and fertilizer market. The little animal rejoices. This way, the drive lanes will hit the jackpot, and he is confident in the success of this plan. Danby recalls, in the novel, the drive lanes were famous for their military might, golems, weapons, and bombs. But in fact, the family is also deeply versed in plant growing. It's all about the current Duchess, a spirit caster who has made a contract with the spirit of the earth. She has long studied how to grow crops indoors to help people. Her goal was to feed the hungry, which is why she worked so hard on her research. Thanks to her work, the seeds of House Drivelane surpass any others in strength and endurance. With the arrival of spring, they will reap the first harvest, which will provide more than just food. Danby suddenly realizes, how could he know about the seeds if it's the Drivelane's secret? Lord Refirin asks suspiciously where the saint got such information. The kid understands that his knowledge looks suspicious, and he needs to come up with something urgently. Danby decides he'll have to hand over Caraxes to get out of this. The little animal, with a sweet smile, declares that it was Kiss who told him everything. Lord Refirin barely holds back his laughter. Kiss? You mean Caraxes? The advisors choke with laughter, and Danby justifies himself by saying that the full name is too complicated. The kid explains that he asked Kiss to help the drive lanes, and he shared the idea about the seeds. Lord Refirin laughs and praises Danby for being smart despite her tiny head. The head of the family announces that such a wonderful child deserves a reward, which surprises Danby. Lord Rafirin explains, the Drivlanes take what they want, but not mindlessly. The head of the family demands that Danby himself name the price of his merits, preparing him for the future. The kid understands that he is being accepted into the Drivelane family, and the Lord is waiting for an answer. Danby remembers his past life as a wanderer who had no place. The little animal is delighted. He finally has a real home. Lord Rafirin asks again about the price of the deposit, emphasizing that he needs more than just an obedient child. Danby realizes that they want to see him as a worthy daughter-in-law of the House of Drivelane. The baby squeezes his paw. This is a test of his ambitions. The little animal decides to show ambitions worthy of the Drivelanes and declares its desire. Danby boldly says, Drivelane, shocking the counselors. Lord Rafirin asks in shock, what? Not believing his ears? Danby, standing before the Lord, explains, what I want? Their glances meet, the determination of the little animal versus the surprise of the head of the family. The kid proudly declares, I want to get a Drivelane. Lord Rafirin frowned and asked, you want the Drivelane family right now? Danby confidently replies, yes, because the little animal enthusiastically proclaims, the Drivelane family is the strongest and best in the world. The advisors behind the Lord's back whisper, perplexed by the little boy's insolence. A subtle but meaningful smile appears on Lord Rafirin's face. The head of the family gently touches Danby's head, saying, so that's it. And the little animal timidly wonders if he's gone too far. Lord Rafirin suddenly presses the animal to his cheek, touched by its audacity. The advisors were stunned. They certainly did not expect such a reaction from the head of the family. The head of the family explains that he cannot give Drivelane yet, but he will offer something else. The kid is offered to choose his personal quarters. The reward is not long in coming. Danby is delighted. His own room. He sincerely thanks the Lord. However, Lord Rafirin believes that one room will not be enough. The head of the family asks about Danby's age, but he himself does not know it. The baby recalls unsuccessful attempts to turn into a human to find out his age. He sadly suggests that his albinism is interfering with the transformation. Lord Rafirin watches the little animal carefully, lost in his thoughts. Lord Rafirin explains that he asked about age because Danby looks like a baby who needs a nanny. The head of the family promises to find a way to help Danby turn into a human if he wants. Lord Rafirin assures that even without the transformation, Danby is part of the family, and he should not be sad. The kid realizes that he has become a member of the Drivelane family, no matter what. The little animal decides to prove its usefulness to the Drivelanes by casting aside all shyness. Danby raises his paw, letting the head of the family know that he has something else. The kid asks for a map, and the advisor immediately provides it. The advisor asks if Danby is going to point out new lands to conquer, but he promises more important information. The animal confidently points its paw at the first point on the unfolded map. Danby notes a few more places, and the advisor curiously asks what these locations are. Danby announces that all the places he indicated will soon be suddenly flooded, shocking everyone. The advisor with the map is perplexed. How does the child know about the front line, and can this be trusted? The baby desperately begs to be trusted, his eyes full of determination. The little animal reminds them. His prediction about spring came true. Will they regret not trying again? Lord Rafirin thoughtfully admits that if there is a flood, Danby will suffer too, so there is no point in lying to him. The head of the family admires the animal's confidence, noting how perfectly it fits into the Drivelane family. The Lord orders Rafirin to notify everyone immediately, with extreme caution, and he complies. Another advisor, in a panic, challenges the head's decision, believing it to be too hasty. Lord Rafirin calmly suggests that the doubting advisor think it over carefully. The advisor realizes that correct information will save the soldiers, while false information will sow chaos among the enemy. The Drivelanes have nothing to lose. Lord Rafirin, looking at Danby, says, above all, I want to believe this child. The head of the family announces a defense meeting and sends Danby to choose his own quarters. The little boy is touched. The Lord's words echo in his little heart. Danby is determined. He not only wants recognition, but he is also afraid of letting down the one who believed in him. The little animal looks at the Lord with hope, believing that his prophecy will be useful. As the head of Drivelane promised, from that day on, Danby had his own luxurious apartment. The first to be introduced is Evangeline, the Caracol nanny assigned to care for the young mistress. Next, Linda, the personal sheepmaid responsible for Danby's outfits and baths, is introduced. The parade is completed by John, the bear knight who has become the animal's personal bodyguard. Thus, Danby acquired not only a room, but also a personal nanny, a maid, and a night bodyguard. Maid Nina offers Danby some pudding. "Young mistress, say I am." The baby readily opens his mouth, anticipating a treat. Danby happily devours the dessert, filling her cheeks full. The other servants vied with each other to demand that the young mistress be fed as well. The little animal thinks that just recently he could not even dream of such attention. Danby's popularity in the Drivelane family is growing every day. The baby enjoys adoration as servants compete to offer their services. Danby wonders if Caraxes knows about her current situation. Caraxes, who has become the young head of the family, is now very busy, and Danby hardly sees him. The little animal remembers with slight sadness how Caraxes paid attention to her and then disappeared on business. The kid remembers Pom-Pom, a golem given to him by Caraxes. Danby tries to remember when exactly it happened. It seems that it happened at night, 2 days after that very meeting. Flashback. Danby wakes up in his crib, rubbing his eyes. Suddenly, Caraxes appears in the room asking if he woke her up. Caraxes explains that he arrived late, but otherwise he would not have been able to give the gift. A magic circle, like a clock face, flashes on his palm. The surprised little animal exclaims, "This is..." A small golem appears from the magical light and Danby recognizes it. Caraxes explains that it is a communication golem to wish each other good morning and good night. Caraxes adds, "Double tapping the head will turn Pom-Pom into a translator." Danby hugs the gift with delight, promising to use it carefully. Caraxes approves of her joy with a warm smile. From that day on, as the inscription says, they never spoke again. The kid is a little upset, but he understands that Caraxes is very busy. Plus, she has this gift. Pom? Danby remembers the name. The little animal squeezes its paw. "You need to try harder to earn Caraxes' favor." Danby hugs Pom-Pom resolutely. "From now on, I'm counting on you." Two maids point into the distance with smiles, inviting people to look. It turns out that it is Danby, who is carried on the head, and the servants whisper, "This is a saint." Danby, sitting on someone's head, hears how her warning saved the soldiers and allowed them to counterattack. The story moves back a few days, where the riders are riding through a snowy forest at night. The soldiers of the Magic Empire are presumptuously preparing to teach the enemy a lesson. One of them anticipates an easy victory, not noticing the ominous red eyes in the darkness. Confident of success, he gives the order to destroy the enemy. Suddenly, the captain is struck by an attack and his comrade screams his name in horror. Frightened eyes reflect the shock of the unexpected attack. From the darkness, ferocious tigers emerge, ready to tear their enemies to pieces. The Empire soldiers realize that they themselves have been ambushed, but their opponents were prepared. Thanks to the prophecy coming true, Danby became a true superstar in Drivelane. The servants whisper behind their backs, "The albino represents Drivelane. It's a bit..." Danby hears the gossip, but decides that such people don't bother her. The faithful maid fiercely defends the saint, mentioning rumors of the power spent on the spring. The little girl thinks quite happily that the rumors are spreading very well, and she knows who is spreading them. It turns out that the grandfather himself, the head of the Raffiran family, is behind the ridiculous rumors. Lord Raffiran smiles slyly, and Danby is perplexed. Why such words? The little animal is in a panic. Could it be that they found out about her since she tried so hard not to give herself away? Danby, shaking and sweating, babbles, What do you mean?" The head of the family calmly states that he never believed in gods, and the reality of Danby is not important to him. The little girl breathes a sigh of relief. It means she wasn't caught, and he was talking about something completely different. Grandfather claims that Danby is the true saint who awakened the spring, and he will spread the rumor about the Empire's false saint. The little girl, gnawing on a cookie, is happy that now no one will dare to look down on her. Lord Raffiran adds, "With the coming of spring, a peace treaty will be concluded, and predictions of ambushes will no longer be needed." Danby decides that there is no time to relax. He needs to work hard to earn their recognition. The servant on whose head Danby sits notices her thoughtfulness and asks with concern if everything is okay. The man sympathetically asks if the young lady is ill, but Danby babbles that everything is fine. The little animal quickly comes up with an excuse. She was thinking about how to praise the chef's pudding. The servant admires her thoughtfulness, and Danby laughs nervously, realizing that she has only raised the bar of expectations. The little girl thinks that perhaps this is for the best. This way, Caraxes might hear about her and call Pom-Pom. Danby hugs Pom-Pom, happily anticipating that Caraxes will be pleased when he hears of her success. Suddenly, Danby hears a groan and becomes alert. The servant is also alarmed by the sound, and Danby guesses where it is coming from. The little girl understands that the sobbing is coming from the kitchen. Danby firmly orders the servant to take her there immediately. The servant immediately rushes in the indicated direction. Looking around the corner, Danby recognizes a familiar voice. In the kitchen, two people comfort a grief-stricken chef who is kneeling on the ground. Chef Jeff looks up with tears in his eyes when he hears her. Danby smiles happily, and the cook exclaims in surprise, "Young lady." A servant carrying Danby enters the kitchen, and the cook inquires about the reason for their visit. Danby says she came to thank him for today's treats, recognizing Jeff's voice. Chef Jeff, moved to tears, babbles, "Young lady." The little animal ponders the benefits of friendship with the boss, and immediately asks why he is crying. Danby sympathetically offers to find and scold the offender, which makes the cooks feel touched. Jeff's eyes fill with tears, and he begins to sob even harder. The chef lets out a loud roar, and Danby wonders if he's really been offended. The cook's assistant suggests that the young lady look in a certain direction. Danby, turning around, begins to understand with horror what is going on. There is a spoiled pudding in the trash can with the words, "Pudding deceased," written on it. The assistant explains that the heirs complained about the food, and this incident was the last straw for the chef. Danby is furious. The heirs, possibly her future husbands, dared to throw away the food. The little girl demands that the names of the culprits be named, not wanting to marry such spendthrifts. Suddenly, a blonde boy appears in the kitchen asking, "Is this the albino?" The boy was perplexed. He thought that the head of the family was joking about her. He exclaims with disgust, "Am I really going to be forced to marry an albino beast?" The servant and Danby are shocked by his words, and the assistant cook recognizes the person who entered. The cooks bow. This is young Master Gerd, one of the heirs. Danby is shocked. "Gerd? Wait, if it's Gerd..." She recalls how in the original story, Gerd begged Lock-in on his knees not to leave him. In the original, he was handsome, fast, and obedient, but here, in front of her is Gerd, the crown prince of Lycanvium, with his arms crossed and clearly displeased. Danby covers his mouth with his paw, trying his best to hold back a giggle. The cook and the servant watch in amazement as the young lady chokes with laughter. Gerd turns around sharply, his face distorted with surprise and resentment. The little girl can't take it anymore and bursts into loud laughter, pointing her paw. Danby's thoughts run through his head. He's just a little kid. She recalls the list of husband candidates. Gerd is listed there as a picky eater. The entire kitchen froze. The cooks and the servant watch the angry prince's reaction. Gerd shouts indignantly, pointing at Danby, "This thing is laughing at me? What's so funny?" The servant sternly corrects the prince, but he retorts, "She started it." Danby thinks that Gerd is sweet, even when he's angry, but he screams again that she's laughing at him. The prince swings his fist in rage, not believing that some albino dares to make fun of him. Gerd demands that Danby be brought down immediately, trying to reach her, but the servant protects her. The boy indignantly shouts, asking if she is going to ask for forgiveness, but the servant stops the violence. Gerd asks the servant with displeasure if he has taken the albino's side, to which the servant replies that he is simply trying to stop the quarrel. The servant calmly asks the young master to calm down, while Danby watches from his palm. The prince stamps his foot, shouting that she dares to mock him, the second son of Lycanvium, and Danby thinks that he is acting like a child. Gerd, in extreme irritation, exclaims that this thing even has a family, and one of noble blood at that. Danby suddenly makes a poof sound, and Gerd touches his mouth in surprise, not understanding why it is moving on its own. It turns out that Pom-Pom has the filtering magic of Caraxes, turning Danby's crude thoughts into more refined ones, and she bursts into laughter, forgetting about it. The servant is worried, and Danby, choking with laughter, realizes that this boy is one of her suitors. Gerd blushes with anger, muttering that this thing is incredibly annoying to him. The prince complains that in addition to the terrible food and room, she now irritates him, and Danby clings to the word food. The little girl's mind flashes to the image of the discarded pudding, and she guesses who the culprit is. Danby looks menacingly at Gerd, who asks defiantly, "What?" The little animal directly accuses the prince of throwing out the pudding in front of the cooks. Gerd shudders but immediately puts on a brave face, not intending to be frightened by the gaze of some albino. The prince cheekily admits that it was he who threw away the pudding and asks what she will do to him. While the chef is in despair, Danby condemns Gerd, considering him an unworthy candidate for a husband. The little girl mentally brands him not just as an heir, but as a bad person, which shocks the prince. Danby scolds Gerd. Instead of thanking the cooks, he threw out the food right in front of them. The prince blushes with anger when he hears the little animal calling him to account. Gerd clenches his fist, seething with anger. Some lowborn dares to teach him. He calls Danby impudent and threatens to lock her in the tower after the wedding, where she will beg for his love. The servant exclaims in horror, "Young master!" And Danby thinks she doesn't care. But then, the baby, hiding behind the servant's palm, remembers the mention of Lycanvium in the original story. It comes to her mind that King Lycanvium, Gerd's father, had many concubines. And after a while, they were all taken by force to the tower, where they spent the rest of their lives begging the king for leniency. Danby remembers Gerd Lyhan's words that he is not like that, and will only look at her, and gets angry, realizing his deceit. The servant sternly reprimands Gerd, promising to report to the head of the family, and the prince is outraged. Danby speculates that Gerd's spoiled nature explains his reaction, and she even finds it funny. However, the little girl believes that the prince should be punished for his words and calls out to him. "Who said I'd marry you?" Danby says, shocking Gerd. The little animal adds contemptuously that there are enough candidates without him, calling him a blockhead. Gerd flinches at her words, and Danby notices that he is holding back, apparently still wanting to become the heir. The little girl sarcastically suggests that he is afraid of John, since he can't even get angry. Danby decides to end the conversation and tells John to leave, to which he agrees. The servant carries Danby away on his head, leaving Gerd standing there confused and humiliated. Danby recalls that John originally became a strong alpha heir, but not without the help of the kingdom. Gerd trembles with rage, not believing his ears. The prince clutches a ball in his hand, thinking, "How dare you humiliate me in front of the servants?" The ball in his hand flashes blue, and Gerd decides to show his power. He calls out to the departing servant, on whose head sits a surprised Danby. Suddenly, a blue magical paw grabs Danby right off John's head. The servant screams in horror, "Young mistress!" trying to save her. Gerd laughs maliciously, declaring that she will pay for her ridicule. A huge shining bird carries Danby away in its claws. The little girl screams in panic that the prince is completely crazy. John is shocked to recognize the wind spirit, not believing that Gerd used magic against Danby. John warns that this is the guardian spirit of the royal family, and that Gerd will be in trouble, but he only smirks. Gerd states that he doesn't care as long as the spirit is swirling Danby around in the air, and she screams in terror. Danby panics, thinking the prince has gone crazy, and begs for help, feeling sick from the flight. The servant draws his sword, determined to drive out the spirit by force, as Danby's safety is his top priority. The prince shouts furiously at the servant, not believing that he dares to threaten him because of the albino. Gerd waves his hand dismissively, ordering Danby to be taken away, and the spirit releases her straight into the servant's hands. The baby falls into John's hands, complaining of dizziness and denying that she is okay. Danby, barely coming to her senses, decides that she tried to rise above this, but her patience snapped. With sparkling eyes, she declares that she will take revenge, shocking the servant. As Gerd turns away to leave, Danby appears to be preparing a counterattack. Gerd screams in pain, not understanding what is happening. Danby, clutching his ear, angrily asks what he thinks it is. The little animal vengefully bites the prince's ear until it bleeds, calling him a brat. Gerd yells at her to let go, but Danby is adamant. He started it. The prince tries to unhook Danby, accidentally throwing away her little spirit. The tiny spirit falls to the floor with a dull thud. John begs them to stop while Gerd demands to be let go, and Danby mentally responds in kind. The two maids watch the fight in confusion, not knowing what to do. The chef exclaims in horror that they will get hurt, realizing that it is too late. Suddenly, a strict order is given to immediately stop this outrage. A stern man in glasses asks what kind of noise they are making. He orders them both to follow him. Danby agrees, and Gerd snorts. In the office, a red-haired woman is treating Gerd's ear under the supervision of a man and John. The prince's ear is bandaged, and the woman announces that she is finished. The man scolds Gerd, not believing that they started such a fight. Gerd screams that this creature has maimed him, and he will complain to his father, but the man sees that he has not repented. The man asks about the children's condition, and the woman replies that they only have scratches. He asks the woman to leave them alone, and she agrees, asking him not to scold them too much. The woman leaves the office, offering to call her when they are finished. The man and John look sternly at the seated Gerd, the atmosphere growing tense. The man in glasses adjusts them, demanding a full account of what happened, and Danby senses his anger. John tries to intervene, but the man decides to interrogate the children directly. Gerd looks defiantly. The prince fears that he will be exposed as the guilty one, and then even John and the cooks will suffer. Gerd decides to act first and declares that he will report everything to the head of the family personally. The man calmly asks if the prince really thinks he can disrupt the schedule of the head of the family. The man in glasses' intense gaze makes Gerd shut up and the atmosphere becomes tense. He then turns to Danby, asking if she has anything to say about this. The little girl with the bandaged tail guiltily apologizes for biting him on the tail. A barely noticeable, mysterious smile appears on the man's lips. He notes that the young lady seems to understand everything perfectly. Danby is embarrassed. The man continues to scold Gerd for his barbaric behavior. Danby listens, wondering why the prince is acting like this. She remembers how Gerd threw away her pudding. The man asks what Danby means. Danby explains that the prince threw away the pudding. She tells how the cooks tried to prepare it. Danby is outraged that Gerd insulted her and the cooks. Her little spirit suddenly begins to translate her thoughts. Danby realizes that this is the perfect moment to tell the truth. Gerd confirms that he threw out the pudding and doesn't see a problem with it. The spirit of Danby broadcasts Gerd's words about being imprisoned in the tower. The prince is horrified. When was this recorded? The man in glasses addresses the prince sternly. "Young master." He coldly asks what the hell is going on here. Gerd, recoiling, shouts that this is absurd. The prince points his finger in panic, claiming that it's all a setup. John suddenly intervenes, confirming that he is a witness. Gerd is shocked by his title. The spirit of Danby, holding the clue, considers this an unexpected but fortunate turn of events. The little spirit gloats, thinking that now the prince is finished. The man with glasses is shocked when Danby's spirit tells how Gerd abused her with the wind spirit. He angrily asks Gerd if he really used the king's guardian spirit to attack. The prince babbles excuses. Gerd, in tears, justifies himself by saying that Danby was the first to start laughing, and why only he is being scolded. Rafirin sternly scolds the prince, pointing out the seriousness of his offense with the royal spirit. The prince screams indignantly, seeing nothing wrong with punishing the albino and her disrespect for the royal person. Suddenly, the office door swings open with a bang, heralding the arrival of someone important. A stately man entered and said disapprovingly, "What recklessness," and Gerd and Rafirin turned around. The little spirit Danby is shocked to recognize the person who entered, not believing his eyes. The head of the Drivelane family, Grandfather Danby, appears. His appearance inspires awe. Next to the head of the family stands Caraxes, the future heir, which surprises those present even more. Caraxes asks his father how he plans to resolve this commotion, and Danby's spirit understands that they heard everything. Danby's spirit decides to act quickly and calls out loudly to the head of the family while Gerd panics. Danby complains to her grandfather, pointing to her ear, and the spirit Gerda calls her cunning. The spirit of Danby thinks that the girl has missed something. The little spirit runs to the head of the family, who responds to her kindly. The head of the family raises his spirits and asks if he is also injured. The spirit of Danby asks the head of the family to hug him, which surprises the man a little. Pressing closer, the spirit notices bloodstains on the collar of the leader's clothes. The spirit, with tears in his eyes, asks his grandfather not to get sick, considering his plan to be brilliant. The little girl continues that if Grandpa gets sick, then Drivelane will also suffer, thinking about the prince's behavior. The head of the family asks if the spirit has noticed the blood, and he hesitates, realizing the complexity of the situation. The grandfather calms the spirit, saying that it is not his blood, and strokes him, and the spirit admires his wisdom. Gerd yells at the chief not to trust the spirit, pointing to his wounds, but the grandfather doubts that the kid could know about the blood. The head of the family looks at everyone coldly, having already made a decision, while Danby's spirit clings to him. Grandfather orders Gerd to remain in the heir's chambers until he repents, and the prince, in a rage, threatens to have his father, the king, intervene. The head of the family smiles ominously, repeating after the prince the word "if." He threatens to strip Gerd of his status as heir and send him home if he disobeys. Gerd remains silent in despair, and Danby is amazed at his stupidity in threatening the head of Drivelane. Caraxes invites Gerd to return home since he loves him so much, and the spirit of Danby teases the prince. Caraxes watches the humiliated prince with a barely noticeable smile. The future heir decides to take the frightened spirit of Danby, and the head of the family approves of this. Caraxes takes the spirit and disappears into the magic circle, leaving the others to sort things out. The spirit of Danby waves his paw, saying goodbye to the head of the family. "See you later, head." The head of Drivelane looks at the spirit flying away with a smile, shouting, "Goodbye!" Grandfather Danby thinks with affection what a polite spirit she is, and wonders whose daughter-in-law she will become. The magic circle disappears, leaving Caraxes in his chambers. Caraxes stands in the middle of the room, holding Danby's spirit after teleporting. The heir walks around the room with the spirit in his arms, wondering why he used magic at all. Danby's spirit notices that Caraxes seemed to be in a hurry to get her there faster. Caraxes advises the spirit to rest, and he replies that his ear hurts a little, but Gerd is punished. The heir confirms Gerd's punishment, but thinks with annoyance that he would have liked it to be more severe. Danby's spirit reassures him that she will not marry Gerd anyway, so she will not encounter him again, and Caraxes agrees. Caraxes assures that there are other candidates, and the spirit of Danby laughs, anticipating new acquaintances. The heir thoughtfully warns that some meetings may be postponed, which surprises the spirit. He explains that one candidate is a swordsman from the military academy, and Danby guesses that it is Dante. The other is a shark beast man from the imperial family, and the spirit assumes that it is Yuri from the Helicoprian clan. Caraxes mentions one last candidate who he says can be disregarded, which puzzles Danby. It turns out that it is Gerd's older brother who will probably refuse the inheritance, and Danby understands the logic of the choice. Caraxes promises that Danby will meet with the others and asks that any problems be reported. Danby's spirit notices that Caraxes has become friendlier and wonders if it is because of her illness. The heir reminds her that her bodyguard must prevent trouble in the first place. Caraxes announces John's punishment for failing to defend, shocking Danby's spirit. Caraxes is adamant. John failed to protect himself, and Danby's spirit is outraged by such logic. The spirit of Danby exclaims, "This won't do!" and calls his little robot Pom-Pom. The little girl resolutely nudges her faithful Pom-Pom with her paw, calling him to action. Caraxes turns around, and Danby's spirit hotly proves that the bodyguard could not resist the heir of Drivelane. The spirit screams that John had no authority to act more harshly, and that drawing his sword was already an offense. Danby insists that blaming John without giving him power is unfair. Caraxes listens. Suddenly, Danby's spirit, taking on a larger form, addresses Caraxes. "This is wrong!" Danby stands in front of the heir, arms crossed, and asks him point-blank if he thinks this is fair. Caraxes thinks to himself with a slight smile. "The more I look, the more you look alike." The spirit of Danby asks in surprise, "What did you say?" And Caraxes answers with a smile, "Nothing." Danby's spirit vehemently protests, "Of course not. What did John do wrong?" Caraxes says with a slight grin, "Ha!" The heir, sitting down, calms the spirit. "Okay, I understand, don't be angry," and Danby is puzzled. The spirit of Danby wonders to himself that Caraxes can laugh like that. Caraxes tells her that he has brought her to tell him something, and Danby listens attentively. He mentions classes starting tomorrow and pauses meaningfully. The heir announces that he has found a way to give her official status, which shocks the spirit. Caraxes says that there is someone willing to become her adoptive mother, but Danby panics and screams, "Status? That's impossible!" The heir, with his arms crossed, calmly asks, "What exactly?" Danby is skeptical since she is just an albino girl, but Caraxes replies that it is not entirely impossible. Danby's spirit reflects on a strange feeling. She helped Drivelane, but was it too much? The little girl admits to herself that one question has been tormenting her for a long time. Danby remembers how Caraxes lied and called her a saint to help her. He even gave her Pom-Pom. All of this seems very suspicious to her. The spirit of Danby looks at the heir with distrust, asking himself why he is so kind. A question flashes in her head. Is he hiding something? Caraxes returns to the topic of classes that begin tomorrow and pauses. The heir announces with a smile that he has found a way to give her official status. Danby is shocked. He says that there is someone who wants to become her adoptive mother, but she is in the mountains of Yanteros, and Danby screams, "Yanteros?" The spirit is horrified by the image of Yanteros, a mountain of petrified dragons where magic is almost powerless. Danby's spirit worries that Caraxes will go to the dangerous mountains of Yanteros for her sake, but he only kindly notes her concern. The little girl screams in confusion, asking what kind of status this is and what he's talking about anyway. Caraxes calmly asks what is bothering her, and Danby is sure that no one will accept an albino into the family. Danby's spirit wonders why he is so kind to her, and she is plagued by vague suspicions. She asks him directly if he wants something in return, because his actions are completely incomprehensible to her. A memory flashes. Little Aram cries bitterly at the funeral, realizing that everything has a price. In the past, a dark female figure invites an orphaned girl to go with her uncle. Young Aram, through tears, desperately agrees to the stranger's proposal. A woman with a sinister smile thinks about the money from the girl's parents' insurance. The spirit of Danby concludes that she learned from childhood that there is no such thing as free kindness, and is not used to it. Danby fears that this kindness will break her, because it can only prevent Drivelane from falling. She thinks that returning to her past life, having become accustomed to kindness, will be even more pitiful. Caraxes says thoughtfully, the reason, and Danby hopes for a selfish motive. The heir suggests that it is because of her resemblance to her, which puzzles the spirit. Caraxes dismisses the idea that there is no reason to treasure the collection, but Danby counters that it is not a display piece. The spirit sadly thinks that she is not a daughter, but a daughter-in-law, while Caraxes dreams of a daughter. Caraxes asks her outright if she's surprised that he didn't reveal her identity, and Danby nods. He replies, "Just because I want to," and Danby is shocked by this reason. Danby remembers that he dabbled in dark magic out of boredom, and decides not to look for logic in his actions. Caraxes gently strokes her head, advising her not to think about it too much. Caraxes smiles and declares that Danby is Drivlane's daughter-in-law, no matter what they say. The little spirit understands he noticed her anxiety. The heir takes her in his arms, advising her not to worry anymore and to go to bed. Caraxes puts her to bed, wishing her good dreams, and Danby yells that this is too sudden. The spirit indignantly exclaims that it is still daytime, pointing to the light outside the window. Caraxes is about to leave, offering her to rest, but Danby tries to stop him. The little girl clarifies, because she is not officially his daughter-in-law yet, right? The heir stops, explaining that the Duchess's approval is needed for official recognition. He adds that the Duchess has been in seclusion for a year, but will soon recover, so there is no need to worry. Danby remembers sadly, a year ago. That's when Ariadne died. Danby remembers Inanna Abigail Drivelane, the 18th Duchess and mother of Caraxes. It was said that the Duchess lived in seclusion for a long time due to grief over her deceased daughter. The little spirit understands that the Duchess has no time for her daughter-in-law now, and attempts to please her will only cause irritation. Danby decides not to do anything that might upset the grieving mother. The next day, in front of the globe, a voice is heard. "Allow me to introduce myself again." Before Danby appears Rafirin Gervais, a baron and owl beastman, her new mentor. Rafirin begins to ask about her well-being, looking closely at the student. The teacher notes her cheerful appearance, and Danby thinks that she has slept for a whole day. Rafirin announces the start of classes, and Danby enthusiastically agrees. The first rule of the Drivelanes is that they are a meritocracy, where you have to be a calculating strategist, not a simpleton. Rafirin explains, Drivelanes choose their prey carefully and always strike with certainty. Danby thinks it's obvious but realistic, better than preaching humility. The teacher mentions something important about the Drivelanes, and Danby guesses, the gun? Rafirin takes out a new type of pistol that turns Eculus into bullets. This is the most important product of the Drivelanes, created by Caraxes, and Danby will learn how to use it. The little girl is delighted. Learning to shoot a pistol straight is so cool. Rafirin clarifies, they won't give her a real pistol yet because the Drivelanes only teach this to people starting at age 10. However, the teacher will show her an old-style bullet for her to examine, but just looking at it is dangerous. The bullets smell like cinnamon, but thanks to Caraxes, the new magic bullets are free of this drawback. Danby raises her paw, letting the teacher know that she has one burning question. Danby is worried. Spring has come, the war is over, and how will the Drivelanes make money? Rafirin asks with a grin, who said that there would be no one to sell weapons to after the war. The teacher asks a tricky question. Where else, besides attacks, can you use weapons? It dawns on the little girl. Weapons are needed for defense, not just for attack. Rafirin explains. Their target is those who are preparing for war, not those who are waging it. The mentor declares nobles will learn to use the drive lane pistols as a sign of refinement. Danby realizes the enormity of the drive lane's plans, seeing their future greatness. Rapharin, adjusting his glasses, turns to the young lady with obvious satisfaction. The little girl notices the satisfied expression on her mentor's face. The teacher praises Danby for understanding the drive lane's plans, predicting a bright future for them. Danby is eager to learn how to shoot, feeling that he is a perfect fit for the drive lanes. Rapharin announces the final topic for the day, and Danby listens in curiosity. The teacher shows her the document, and the little girl screams, "Family tree!" On the drive lane tree, one can see portraits of the heirs leading up to the current generation. Rapharin explains that they will consider candidates for the young lady's husband. The mentor clarifies, only 3 can enter the main house, so you only need to remember them. Danby is happy that this will make planning easier, but the teacher mentions one problem. Rapharin adds seriously that there is one most likely candidate, based on the political situation. A sinister image of Lord Gerd appears before Danby, and she falls into a stupor of horror. The little spirit girl realizes in a panic, Gerd is the most likely candidate for a husband? Danby is horrified. Is Gerd really the main contender, and she will have to endure him until he wins? Rapharin advises to develop a plan to eliminate Gerd, because he is proud and will soon start causing mischief. The mentor insists that it is better to get rid of him quickly, but Danby timidly asks what if it doesn't work out. The teacher calmly suggests that tomorrow's lunch may be poisoned, shocking the little girl. Rapharin reassures him that Gerd will not take any serious steps until Caraxes leaves, and mentions a suitable stepmother in the mountains. Danby exclaims to himself in panic, but Caraxes is not here now. The thought arises, with the disappearance of Caraxes, his ill-wishers may become more active. The little girl imagines the poisoned food in fear, wondering how she will survive until Caraxes returns. Danby ponders, should she ask Jeff to bring her food or eat it herself to avoid unnecessary trouble? Rapharin notices Keith's absence, sighs, and decides that there's nothing to be done. Rapharin, turning away, declares that as a mentor, he will help her. The teacher recalls the long-standing alliance between the Magocracy and the Kingdom of Rehenbium. Rehenbium supplies supplies and plays a vital role in holding back the Holy Empire. Danby remembers Gerd's bite and is horrified to think that he might become her husband. The mentor explains, the kings of Rehenbium have always ruled with contempt and arrogance. Rapharin adds grimly that albinos have always been scapegoats. The teacher is convinced that after hearing all this, Gerd will definitely try to harm her. Rapharin's face expresses extreme seriousness and concern about the situation. The mentor directly asks if Danby wishes to eliminate Lord Gerd. The little girl looks at the teacher with hope when he says there is a way. Rapharin offers Danby the opportunity to earn a great honor and be given the right to choose. The teacher explains, there are too many candidates and Lady Florin will be able to eliminate half of them. To gain this right, you have to do something so impressive that no one can object. The mentor shrewdly asks if the little girl doubts her abilities. Danby is determined to earn this right. Rapharin is waiting for her accomplishments with a smile, and the little girl promises to try her best. However, Danby has another very curious question for the teacher. The little girl is worried. What if Gerd, having been eliminated, does not accept defeat and rebels? Rapharin reassures, the losers receive the title of Border Duke and can later nominate their children. Danby is relieved to realize that since their children can become successors, the losers do not resist. Rapharin admits that there were also those who tried to seize the place by force, rejecting traditions. The teacher reassures, even in such cases there are mediators who resolve conflicts, so there is no need to worry. The mentor adds, those who do not become candidates often receive important positions, so most resign themselves. Danby sees the image of the founder of the family. Her will is that the strongest man of the Drivelines will lead the house after a fierce struggle. The little girl asks thoughtfully, what if a daughter is born who surpasses all men in strength? Rapharin explains, according to tradition, only a man could become the head of the house, but one day it was broken. The teacher's gaze becomes especially piercing, foreshadowing an important story. The mentor calls out a name, Lady Ariadne, sister of Lord Caraxes, who has proven her exceptional talent. Rapharin shares a story. Ariadne was so outstanding that all the other male candidates withdrew their candidacies. Danby is amazed. She knew about Ariadne's greatness, but the story of a loved one makes a special impression. Rapharin, looking at his watch, announces that he has to go, and Danby wonders how long he spent with her. The little spirit clings to the teacher's sleeve, grateful for his time. Danby suddenly hands Refiren a candy, and he looks at her in surprise. The teacher recognizes the gift as the young lady's favorite caramel. Danby explains with a smile that this is gratitude for today's help. Refiren muses that the value of a gift is relative, meaning that this caramel is very important to Danby. The mentor's hand carefully takes the candy from the baby's paw. Refiren promises with a warm smile that he will not forget the value of this simple treat. The teacher leaves, promising to pass on the message to John, and Danby waves goodbye, deciding to study some more. Left alone, Danby sets about developing a plan to manage her successors with determination. Danby decides that she needs to first thoroughly study her family tree. The little girl notes with surprise that Caraxes has no heirs, probably due to his vow of celibacy, and switches to Ariadne's branch. Suddenly, she notices something strange in the family tree and freezes in bewilderment. Danby recognizes Dante and Yuri, but her attention is drawn to an unfamiliar name, Ian. Who is this Ian, marked in the tree under Ariadne? This question haunts her. Suddenly, Danby, already wearing a cap, is carried to meet the Great Lady, the head of the clan. The stern figure of the Great Lady exudes such authority that Danby feels uneasy. The little girl is in a panic, wondering why she was called so suddenly, because she did not expect to meet so soon. Danby trembles with fear. What if the Great Lady doesn't like her and she just throws her out? The maid tries to reassure her, suggesting that it is just an acquaintance, but Danby is still afraid of rejection. The maid assures the dressed-up Danby that the Great Lady will definitely like her, but the little girl only mumbles an uncertain, okay. At the door of the Duchess's chambers, the maid stops, and Danby shudders in fear. The maid warns, the Duchess is unwell, she must not be upset, and Danby nods with trepidation. The heavy door to the Great Lady's chambers creaks open. Bowing respectfully, the maid invites Danby to enter the semi-darkness of the room. Another older maid carries Danby, who looks around the Great Lady's chambers with curiosity. Suddenly, the little girl's eyes widen in amazement, noticing something incredible. Danby's gaze is drawn to the huge, blindingly shining chandelier under the ceiling. The little girl is amazed. Every object in the room screams luxury and elegance. Danby is puzzled. Although she is here for the first time, everything around her seems strangely familiar to her. The maid reports to the Great Lady that she has brought the guest she requested. A voice from the depths of the room says, "So you are the one Caraxes brought." Danby, still in the arms of the maid, trembling, greets the Great Lady. The little girl glances nervously to the side, her anxiety unquenchable. The Great Lady, Inanna, with a gentle smile, asks to be called simply by her name. Inanna admits that she has wanted to meet him for a long time, but only came to her senses yesterday. The Duchess assures her that she is feeling better and invites Danby closer for a chat. Inanna addresses the elderly servant warmly. Long time no see, Evangeline. The Great Lady sadly recalls how Evangeline cared for their Ari. Danby realizes that Evangeline was Lady Ariadne's nanny, and she had a hard time of it too. Inanna asks if Evangeline really cares about Danby now, and she confirms. The Great Lady asks if Danby knows why the Duke assigned Evangeline to her. Inanna explains, Evangeline was the nanny of her daughter Ariadne and remained with her even when she became acting head. The Duchess reports that the Duke has entrusted Danby with the faction that once stood behind Ariadne. Danby is stunned. Lady Ariadne's faction is entrusted to her? It's true. The little girl recalls her suspicions about the many factions in the Drivelane family and the tense meeting. Danby thinks about the greed of the other candidates who would only care about their own gain if it weren't for that little one. Realizing that the Duke has placed Ariadne's trusted men next to her, Danby bows deeply, promising to justify the trust. Inanna smiles and praises Danby's intelligence and offers her some cookies. Danby tries the treat, wincing slightly as Inanna wonders out loud where Caraxes found such a child. Danby sheepishly thinks that some things are better left secret, while Inanna sympathizes with her inability to take human form. The little girl dejectedly admits to herself that, no matter how hard she tries, she doesn't feel equalite at all. Inanna explains that equilith is everywhere, and by learning to collect it, Danby will be able to become human, although it is twice as difficult for albinos. With hope, Danby asks again, and the Great Lady promises to find her a teacher according to the equilit sense. Inanna, with a warm smile, invites Danby to contact her with any questions as long as her health allows. Danby clutches the cookie, thinking painfully how hard it is to see such a kind lady suffer. The little girl understands that she cannot even imagine the pain of losing a child, but she feels how deeply Inanna suffered. Suddenly, Danby is overcome by a strange feeling of déjà vu, and a scene from the past appears before her eyes. Ariadne joyfully tells her mother about the blooming lingonberries. Young Inanna replies that it is a wonderful sign, and Danby, still in Evangeline's arms, widens her eyes in shock. Inanna asks the baby with concern what happened to her, noticing her sudden change. Danby drops the cookie, trying to process the memory he just saw. Before her eyes, Ariadne says goodbye to her mother, and Danby feels as if she saw it with her own eyes. Inanna begs her daughter to return after the last war, and Ariadne promises. In warm embraces, Ariadne confesses her love to her mother before her fateful departure. Suddenly, the vase shatters into pieces. Inanna's cry of despair echoes throughout the room at the news of her daughter's death. "My child!" Inanna begs in agony to take her too, unable to bear the loss. The grief-stricken Inanna cries inconsolably, and next to her stands a pot of those very same lingonberries. A lingonberry bush, once a symbol of joy, is now a silent witness to her immeasurable grief. The plant that Ariadne spoke of now looks withered, reflecting Inanna's pain. Danby looks at the familiar chandelier and realizes, she remembers this room. She remembers everything. It dawns on Danby, this is the very room where she first inhabited a body. The little girl is horrified. How is this possible? I was here. I saw everything with my own eyes. A sudden revelation leaves Danby in complete shock. In shock, Danby falls off the table and Inanna cries out, "My child!" The baby breathes heavily. A new stream of memories overwhelms her. Ariadne and Caraxes from the past appear before her mind's eye. In the memory, Ariadne joyfully greets her mother, telling her that she has finally found it. Ariadne assumes that her mother will be surprised by the video stone, and Caraxes confirms her words. Caraxes suggests placing the dice there for safekeeping. Ariadne objects, saying that he needs the bone more if he is seriously injured. Ariadne warns Caraxes against using untested artifacts that enhance Iquilith. She fears that the price for such power may be too high, even life. The girl reminds that they searched for bones for a long time and found only 3, including the one that Rachel gave. Caraxes agrees, but points out that the Holy Empire is also hunting them, and losing them in battle is unacceptable. Ariadne wonders where to hide the bones so that her mother will find them but not throw them away. She decides to use the vanity, a wedding gift from her father, which contains a secret compartment that Caraxes did not know about. Ariadne admits that she made the cache without her mother's knowledge, and Caraxes gently reproaches her for being overconfident. She asks her brother to keep the secret, and not show the hiding place to her mother until she discovers it herself. Caraxes makes a promise, and Ariadne fondly calls him a good little brother. Having made up her mind, Ariadne reaches into the dressing table drawer, preparing to hide the artifacts. Ariadne's memory is interrupted, and Danby suddenly comes to, still in shock. Inanna and Evangeline lean over the baby with concern, asking if she's all right. Danby looks around, not understanding where she is, and Inanna explains that she was examined by a doctor after fainting. Evangelina is worried. The doctor didn't find anything, but the sudden fainting still causes concern. Danby denies feeling unwell, frantically thinking about the vivid memory he just saw. If this is true, she must tell Inanna about Ariadne's hiding place, but how? Suddenly, Danby notices that Ariadne's vanity is shimmering strangely, surprising Inanna. The little girl claims to have seen a sparkle and jumps off the bed, rushing to the table to Evangeline's surprised cries. Danby confidently presses on the secret mechanism and it gives way with a click. A glowing artifact falls out of the opened cache, leaving Evangeline and Inanna in amazement. There is a glowing artifact on the floor, a video stone that fell out of the cache. Danby is puzzled. There was also a dice in the memory. Why is there only a video stone here? Evangeline is amazed to tell Inanna that a video stone has fallen out of the vanity. Inanna is shocked. The secret place is in her table, and it even contains her daughter's video stone. Inanna reaches for the artifact, realizing that only her children could have done this. As soon as Inanna touches the video stone, it flashes brightly in her hand. Suddenly, Ariadne's voice comes from the stone. "Oh, mother!" A projection of a smiling Ariadne appears before Inanna. "You've finally found it." Inanna clasps her hands to her chest, unable to believe her eyes and ears. Inanna reels back in shock, and Evangeline barely manages to catch her. Danby watches in amazement, not believing his eyes. Inanna is sobbing, unable to hold back her tears, and Evangeline tries to calm her down. A hologram of Ariadne turns to her parents with a smile, asking if they are surprised. Ariadne admits that she decided to record this video to finally tell her parents about her love. The projection shows an image of young parents with a baby, and Ariadne speaks of their boundless love. Ariadne mentions her parents' concerns about her going to war, with swords in the ground visible in the background. She explains that it is her duty as a Driblian, and asks to remember her honor if anything happens. Ariadne promises to try to be there for as long as possible, wishing her parents a long life. Ariadne's face in the projection glows with tenderness, preparing to pronounce the main words. "I love you, Mom, Dad," Ariadne says, and Inanna and her husband listen, filled with grief. Ariadne's father, with tears in his eyes, calls her a disrespectful child who left them so early. The husband tenderly embraces Inanna, whispering words of comfort to her. Inanna, clinging to her husband, cries bitterly, confessing how much she misses Ari. He gently advises her not to hold back her emotions, to cry and laugh when she wants. The husband reminds her that she hid her feelings for too long, and their daughter would like them to live. Evangeline, holding Danby, hopes that this will at least slightly ease Inanna's suffering. Ariadne's father turns to Danby, asking in surprise how she found the artifact. Danby is in a panic. How to explain how she knew, because even her parents didn't know. The little girl babbles that the stone simply sparkled, and her father assumes that she has a magical gift. The head of the family, barely holding back tears, thanks Danby for showing them a daughter who commands them to live. Ariadne's father offers Danby any reward for such a valuable find. Inanna looks at the little girl with a barely noticeable smile, waiting for her answer. Danby, in his beast form, stutters, not knowing what to ask for. The little girl asks for time to think, and her parents agree with understanding. Danby happily promises to announce his decision later. Later, in his crib, Danby is sad, thinking about his missed chance. She understands that her parents were too absorbed in memories of Ariadne to talk about an heir. Danby feels like they wanted to stay in these precious moments longer. The little girl thinks longingly about her own family, who would mourn her. A tear rolls down Danby's eye, reflecting her deep sadness. Danby wipes away a tear, chiding herself for her weakness. She's already treated better than she deserves. The little girl decides that she can't get upset over trifles. Otherwise, she won't survive here. She needs to toughen up her heart. Danby is determined to survive until the very end this time, no matter what the cost. Meanwhile, the advisor reports that extreme, life-threatening situations are sometimes used to humanize albinos. The elder's proposal to place the young lady in a cage with a leopard horrifies Danby. The advisor, with a serious look, continues to outline ways of natural humanization of albinos, including mortal danger. Danby listens anxiously, waiting for his fate to be decided after such a terrible proposal. However, the head of the family firmly rejects this idea, protecting the baby to the relief of the advisor. Danby breathes a sigh of relief, realizing that the head of the family seems to be on her side. The baby realizes that Inanna kept her promise and is grateful to her for it. Inanna smiles and promises Danby to find a teacher who will teach her to feel Eclise. The new teacher lays out cards in front of Danby, offering to study the manifestation of Eclise. The teacher asks to choose one of the cards, a sword, a staff, or a fairy, to develop abilities. Danby firmly declares that she is not interested in this, but in black magic. The teacher, perplexed, asks again whether the little girl really means black magic. Danby enthusiastically confirms that black magic is the coolest, shocking his mentor. The little girl happily thinks that she has Cassis, the first in the ranking of the magic tower, who will help her. Suddenly, Danby freezes when she hears a sound, and her face expresses alarm. The teacher also turns around, crossing his arms, and sternly asks who is here. There is no one in the room except Danby and the teacher is surprised to think that they are alone. Danby notices that Florin's fluffy white tail is lying on the pillow next to her. The teacher covers his mouth with his hand, as if suddenly realizing something or feeling embarrassed. The teacher announces that due to problems with the class, the lesson will have to be rescheduled. The teacher turns around and suddenly asks to borrow Pum Pum, a small golem. Danby reluctantly agrees, but strictly orders him to return the toy. The mentor, smiling, assures her that he will bring Pum Pum to her room and asks her not to worry. The little girl decides that this is for the best. She will have time to think about her reward. Danby happily waves his paw goodbye, promising to see you later. The teacher is left alone in the room, holding the glowing pum-pum in his hand. The teacher's expression becomes stern. When did I ever allow you to observe a lesson? Poom poom, and the teacher's hand suddenly says, cough. Ah, sorry. The mentor squints at the toy, clearly suspecting something. Cassie's projects from Pum Pum, smiling and saying that he was worried about his daughter-in-law. The teacher angrily threatens Cassis to complain to the head of the family if he peeks again. Cassis calmly asks why the teacher is not in Anteros and where Lord Idaho is. The mentor explains that Lord Idaho has gone into seclusion, blaming himself for failing to protect Ariadne. Cassis sighs, admitting that he too really wants to see his daughter-in-law as soon as possible. The teacher is horrified at the thought of Cassis destroying mountains and begs him not to commit such madness. Cassis speculates that Lord Idaho will appear if he is pushed, but the teacher threatens to tell Danby everything. The mentor wearily asks Cassis to act peacefully while he suggests drawing a giant summoning circle. Cassis promises to contact later, and the teacher expresses hope for a positive response. The teacher is left alone and notices a flash of light in the distance among the snow-covered trees. The mentor, looking into the forest, addresses the invisible interlocutor, inviting him to show himself. The camera focuses on the snow-covered fir trees, creating an atmosphere of mystery. The teacher smiles, noting that he did not expect an immediate appearance, but the arrival itself is already indicative. In the thoughts of the mentor Danby and the silhouette of the leopard, he believes that Florin needs the support of the Idaho family. The teacher is sure that Lord Idaho will change his mind as soon as he sees the baby in person. The main reason is that Danby is incredibly similar to the late Mrs. Ariadne, which is evident from her smiling image. The mentor decides to bring back Lord Idaho at any cost and calls a certain Salones. The teacher walks resolutely through the snow, feeling that Lord Idaho is somewhere very close. Salones tells the invisible interlocutor that there is a child he must protect, a child abandoned by Ariadne. The interlocutor, who has taken the form of a leopard, asks incredulously if this is true, and Salones confirms, although it is a lie. Salones considers his lie white because it is for the good, as long as the leopard takes a step in the snow. This leopard is Ariadne's faithful servant, who lost his purpose after her death, and now he resolutely moves forward. Salones convinces him to return and see what Ariadne left behind. The snow leopard lets out a long sigh, releasing a cloud of steam in the freezing cold. The leopard approaches Salones and they stand together in the middle of the snowy forest. Salones is confident that Danby will become the new target for this loyal creature who has lost his bearings. Meanwhile, two maids in the estate are animatedly whispering about some news. The word spread quickly. Little Danby had found the gift hidden by the late Mrs. Ariadne. The maid reasons. Little Danby has not been here long, but she has already achieved so much. The rumors about the saint are not lying. The cooks in the kitchen are happy. With Danby's arrival, the estate has come to life. She is their savior. Everyone decides to go all out for the welcoming banquet in honor of the little lady. Maid Linda smiles and tells Danby that she has been dressed up and offers her a mirror. Linda hands Danby a dainty hand mirror. Here, take a look. In the reflection, Danby sees herself, a charming fluffy baby in a pink dress with a bow. Danby looks at herself in admiration, thinking how hard Linda tried. The little girl thanks Linda, who replies that Danby is the main character today. Danby realizes that she has been dressed up since the morning, and Linda sheepishly admits that she wanted to try on a lot of things. A tired Danby agrees to Linda's offer to take a walk with John and get some fresh air. Linda is in a hurry to arrange for a walk, and Danby is waiting impatiently. The little girl, although tired, thinks about what is to come with anticipation. Danby presents a lavish banquet in his honor. The heart flutters with excitement. The fluffy face breaks into a smile. Danby is really looking forward to the holiday. Meanwhile, someone's fist comes down hard on the table next to the cup. The golden-haired youth, with a contemptuous grin, does not understand the general excitement around Danby. He remembers a moment when someone called him pathetic when referring to other candidates. The young man shouts in rage that he is superior to everyone else in everything and has sacrificed a lot for the sake of his family. He recalls how his image suffered because of the commoner, and others began to ignore him. The young man angrily asks the tall figure if he deserves such treatment. A hooded figure with a sly grin suggests that the prince begin a certain plan. The golden-haired youth resolutely agrees, confirming the beginning of their actions. The interlocutor in the cloak assures that the preparations were carried out secretly, leaving no evidence. He adds that no one knows about their letter, and the queen will read the prince's message. If the successor's hall is destroyed, the prince will also be considered a victim, deflecting suspicion. The young man is advised to be in plain sight before the explosion, so that many witnesses can provide him with an alibi. The prince declares that he will go and prepare for the banquet, leaving the execution of the plan to his assistant. Peeking out from behind the door, the young man says, "Then, in the name of Rickenbyam." The hooded figure's sinister gaze reflects the conspirators' dark intentions. The inscription, "In the name of Rickenbyam," emphasizes the purpose of their dangerous plan. Dumby, wearing a fancy dress with a bow, attracts someone's attention by shouting, "Hey, look over there!" Dumby's fluffy tail sways playfully as someone wonders, "Oh, is this really the young lady from the rumors?" John stands proudly with Dumby on his shoulder, and two young men behind him are amazed to recognize the little girl as the heroine of gossip. John's friends come closer. One of them notes with envy, "Wow, John, you've made a great career." Two knights vie with each other to offer Dumby their services if John suddenly fails, causing the little girl some slight confusion. Dumby smiles and assures that John is doing a great job, which slightly upsets the persistent suitors. John, with slight irritation, asks his friends to leave them, noticing that the young lady is embarrassed by such attention. Baby Dumby lies adorably on John's shoulder while others dream of petting her fluffy tail at least once. Dumby, comfortably perched on John's shoulder, asks him a question, to which he responds politely. An embarrassed Dumby, blushing, asks John if she is really as sweet as everyone says. Dumby remembers feeling like an insignificant albino with no abilities among the fearsome beasts. John exclaims sheepishly that he is surprised how everyone likes her. The knight immediately corrects himself, assuring that she is, of course, cute, and it is normal for beastmen to be touched by babies. Dumby muses that people find their children cute too, so there's nothing strange about it. John notices her concern about not being able to turn into a human and decides to tell her something. He explains that most beastmen children are clumsy at transforming, and only the monsters from Idra master it as children, shocking Dumby. The little girl asks in surprise if other children are not as good at handling things as she is, and John confirms that this is rare. Dumby realizes that she shouldn't expect herself to be perfect at everything from the start, and John's words reassure her. The baby thanks John, saying that she is better now, and the knight is happy about this with a smile. Dumby decides to take things slow and relax, hoping that one day he will be able to take on human form. Suddenly, John becomes alert when he hears a strange sound. What is that noise? From the depths of the snowy forest comes a cracking sound, as if something is breaking. John's face darkens with worry, and he mutters, "It can't be." Dumby suggests, "John, I think something's happened there. Let's go see." And the knight agrees. John takes off, rushing towards the source of the suspicious noise. As John gets closer to the trees, he notices that the sound is becoming clearer. Dumby's eyes widen as he hears a panicked cry. "Ah! Run!" 3 frightened boys run through the forest, one of them screaming, "Monster! It's a monster!" One of the running boys, with a scratch on his cheek, runs into John's legs in a panic. The boy screams in surprise, looking in fear at the knight blocking his path. The boy is surprised to recognize John, muttering, John?" John asks sternly, "Gentlemen, are you fighting again?" And Dumby, surprised, repeats from his shoulder, "Again." The knight reminds him of the evening banquet, but the boy with the scratch snaps back that he remembers it anyway. The boys run away, calling to each other, and John watches them with a stern look. Dumby notices that John is unusually cold today and assumes that this is not their first skirmish. John finds a red-haired boy sitting alone by a tree. Dumby wonders if he's the one being bullied. Determined to find out, Dumby jumps off the shoulder, causing John to exclaim in surprise, "Oh, young lady!" Baby Dumby lands decisively in the snow in front of the dejected boy. The red-haired boy with the bruises looks up and Dumby asks sympathetically, "Hey, are you okay?" Dumby offers with concern, "You are badly hurt. Come with me, I will heal you." Dumby freezes, looking at the boy in surprise because otherwise he will get dirty. The red-haired boy slowly looks up at her, full of amazement. Ian, covered in bruises, sees before him not a little animal, but a beautiful vision of roses. Dumby, with a jar of ointment, declares that Ian is not guilty and reproaches the man who approaches. The blue-haired man, who appears to be the mentor, sheepishly apologizes for his mistake. Dumby looks sternly, and the mentor says that the young lady doesn't know something. He whispers that Ian has enemy blood in him and is very wild, causing the boy to shrink. Danby listens in shock as the mentor talks about Ian's mother, Ariadne, and her connection to the enemy. The little girl is completely confused by the teacher's words, not understanding what he is getting at. Danby asks directly who Ian's mother is, and the mentor hesitantly confirms, Ariadne. The mentor makes excuses, suggesting that Ian's father is an enemy mercenary. Danby, in robot form, retorts, Ian is half Idris Blanche, so that makes us bad too? Returning to his normal form, Danby calls out sternly to Ian, who flinches in surprise. The baby demands that Ian tell her everything that happened. Ian looks at her, and Danby convinces her that silence won't solve the problem. Danby clenches his fist, realizing how hard it is for him without support and with his pride wounded. She remembers herself in the past, a lonely and defenseless girl. Danby firmly declares that she will be his support so that he can gain courage. Ian blushes when Danby announces him as her future husband. Danby tells the mentor that he will tell the head of the family everything in the evening, and Ian throws a defiant look at him. The mentor irritably demands to be listened to carefully. Danby, putting her paw on Ian, confidently declares that he is a special child. The mentor asks again in bewilderment, is Ian really master? The baby loudly proclaims that Ian will become alpha, shocking everyone around. The mentor repeats Danby's words with a puzzled expression, thinking about what he heard. The man touches his chin thoughtfully, and a sly grin appears on his face. The mentor laughingly remarks that the young lady is as funny as the rumors about her. He adds with a grin that a real alpha would have shown himself by now. The mentor points to a depressed Ian, doubting his leadership qualities. Danby vehemently protests that it's hard for Ian without support, but he will definitely become alpha. The mentor mutters that this squeaky thing is making too much noise, pretending to be the mistress. He states that Idris Blanche's principle is to only raise survivors of cliff falls, so he did not interfere. The man barely restrains the desire to silence Danby, but he knows that now is not the time. He glances sideways at John, admitting that he cannot cope with such an opponent, and decides to retreat. The mentor thinks that this albino's kindness to Ian will soon end. In his mind, Ian is a weak creature who will die without ever making it to the main house. The man with a fake smile tells Danby that he would be happy if her words came true. With the words, "And now I am leaving," the mentor turns to leave. He walks away, heading towards the impressive mansion in the background. Danby glares after him, thinking, what a dude. Wait until I make you feel sorry for him. Danby looks on in surprise as Ian mutters that she shouldn't have come. The boy turns away, repeating that she didn't need help. Ian asks her not to stand up for him, and Danby thinks about how hard it is for him to say thank you. The little girl confidently declares that Ian will become alpha, because he has talent, surprising the boy. Danby seeks support from John, who, after thinking about it, agrees that Ian has talent. Danby emphasizes that these are not empty words, and Ian's eyes widen in amazement. Ian clenches his fists. A mixture of emotions overwhelm him at what he's heard. The boy asks bitterly why then he was unable to enter the cadet school. Danby sadly realizes how much Ian dreamed of the academy and suffered in silence. Ian turns away, asking him to forget his words, and Danby looks at him sympathetically. Ian turns away in embarrassment when he hears Danby say that she gave him a friend. The little girl happily announces, spreading her paws, "Yes, we're friends." Danby runs up to Ian, offering him a hug, and he backs away in surprise. John watches with a smile as Ian refuses, and Danby insists that friends have nothing to be embarrassed about. Danby mentally calls him shy, believing that hugs take some getting used to. Suddenly she freezes, sniffing a strange scent that resembles cinnamon. Danby remembers the lesson. The smell is associated with old bullets, easily detected by beastmen. Turning around sharply, she realizes that it is gunpowder and wonders where it came from on a holiday. Ian looks at Danby, who has suddenly become silent and wary, with confusion. The boy asks why she is looking around like that, and Danby denies it as if nothing happened. Danby thinks about the smell of gunpowder and the wounded Ian, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu. The little girl wrinkles her nose in irritation as the pungent smell of gunpowder becomes stronger and stronger. She looks down and notices something on the ground, saying worriedly, "Wait a minute." Suddenly a memory emerges, a hand holding a document that mentions gunpowder. It dawns on Danby. She remembered that Ian was mentioned in the original story. A specific moment comes to mind. Then definitely, before Danby's eyes, a scene from the past appears. Lariat and Gerard at the training hall for the heirs. Lariat admires the restored building, saying it's really cool. Danby remembers. It was a date between Lariat and Gerard, and then someone got hurt. Gerard in the memory smiles mysteriously as if he knows more. Gerard from the past laments what happened. Lariat listens attentively. Lariat, touched by his words, calls Gerard a very kind man. Gerard accepts the praise humbly, considering it natural. Lariat admires his kindness, and he confesses his love to her, hiding the truth about Ian. In his thoughts, Gerard is cynical. His kindness is just a game for Lariat. He firmly decides that his beloved will never know the terrible secret. Gerard hugs Lariat, hiding the fact that he is the culprit of the explosion that injured Ian. Dumby's memory paints a picture of Ian on fire and the desperate thought, "I wish it would all go away." Gerard's twisted logic emerges. Without that incident, there would have been no need to kidnap Lariat. Downby is amazed by the guess. Gerard himself caused the explosion in the Hall of the Heirs. Danby realizes that this is the very day Ian was supposed to die. She decides not to defuse the bomb right away in order to catch the villain in the act. Danby understands that the criminal is up to something big and he needs to act cunningly. Suddenly, a brilliant idea comes to her on how to fix everything. "We need to use that very method," the little girl decides. Meanwhile, one of the conspirators stamps his foot in rage. His plans are falling apart. The young criminal is shocked. "Is there a holiday here? Why all of a sudden?" he whispers to his accomplice. The intriguing prince does not believe that his insidious plan to blow up the hall is failing. He hoped that after a few incidents, everyone would blame and expel Danby. But why is there suddenly a treasure hunt here? The young demolitionist is indignant. Two smiling maids carry a wooden box, looking forward to a cute treasure hunt for the little mistress. The young villain, peeping, gets angry. The servants can accidentally find his hidden bombs. The enraged prince orders his accomplice to immediately collect all the explosive devices. The accomplice in the cloak reaches for the vase, preparing to take the first bomb from its hiding place. He suddenly freezes when Danby, standing next to him, says, "That's weird. I haven't hidden any treasure yet." The little girl, sitting on John's head, looks questioningly at the stranger's actions. But why did he then? Danby loudly asks if someone has already started looking for the treasure, confusing the conspirator. The accomplice looks around nervously, caught off guard by Danby's innocent yet insightful question. Danby watches him closely, her suspicions about his true intentions only growing. She again voices her question about the premature hunt, her curiosity baffling the attacker. The accomplice in the cloak is nervous, realizing that he has been noticed by Danby, the same albino. He is in a panic. For the plan to succeed, all eyes must be on the main building and not on the scattered gunpowder. The attacker fears that Danby, being a beastman, will smell gunpowder, especially near Grizzly John. Trying to get out of it, he says with a forced smile that he also hid treasure and needs to be careful. Danby from John's head immediately demands, "Grizzly, is that treasure in your hand? Show me." The accomplice panics internally, muttering that his treasure is too modest to show. He offers to show it later, but Danby insists impatiently, "No, I want it now." The young prince hiding behind him is furious. This mad albino is ruining all his plans. John remarks, "Sir Grizzly, it's not time for a treasure hunt yet," but adds that the little girl wants to see. The accomplice, sweating profusely, agrees to hand over the treasure, fearing that Danby will drop or throw it. The accomplice holds out the treasure with a forced smile, begging him to be careful with it. Danby, holding the bomb, frowns with displeasure. "And this is treasure? Heavy. Boring." The attacker chuckles nervously, offering to take the item and hide it again. "I don't want to!" Danby snaps, shocking his accomplice with wide eyes. The little girl looks at the bomb with suspicion, and the conspirator mutters, "Madam, what are you—" Danby swings the bomb sharply, and the accomplice and the prince scream, "Ah!" in horror. Just a child's prank, right? The accomplice thinks, while Danby smiles slyly, as if she understood everything. The little girl confirms her guess with a sly grin. Exactly. Suddenly, Danby hits his accomplice with a bomb right in the face with all his might. The villain screams from the unexpected blow, and the hidden prince screams in panic, "Ah! Dodge!" The prince panics. "Crazy Danby. We have to run before the bomb explodes." Meanwhile, the huge hall where the explosion was supposed to take place is empty and quiet. The attacker looks around in bewilderment. Huh? Why so calm? John holds the bomb in his hands, realizing that it was just a prank again. John looks at the object with curiosity, and Dumby, in the form of an animal, smiles slyly. The prince, covering his face, realizes, damn, she knew everything and did it on purpose. He decides to immediately collect the remaining bombs before it is too late. A grim picture is in his mind. If he is late, everyone in the building will die. The prince is horrified. Then things will take a turn for the worse. My family will be destroyed. He looks around anxiously, his worst fears beginning to come true. The Black Panther steps across the carpet, and in his thoughts runs, Florin was right. The young prince recoils in horror. It can't be! This man… He is overcome with panic. Why is the Duchess, who should be resting, here? The Duchess appears with 2 panthers, reminding everyone of her warning about the bombs. The Duchess sternly declares that she will not forgive the threat against Dribblinette. She decisively orders, catch him, and the panther rushes forward. The prince panics and mutters, whoa, wait, as the panther catches up with him. Meanwhile, the majestic palace stands untouched, bathed in sunlight. Dumby, in animal form, purrs contentedly in someone's arms. The baby is basking in Ian's warm arms, enjoying the moment of peace. Ian holds Dumby the pet tenderly, who purrs contentedly in her arms. The Duchess praises the little girl's intelligence in solving the plan using the gunpowder on her shoes. Ian notes that the sudden treasure hunt in the heir's hall had a deeper meaning. Danby explains that she wanted to lure the criminal out before everyone was hurt by the explosion. The Duchess hugs the little animal with affection, calling her a real blessing for the family. Ian assures that the organizer of the assassination attempt will certainly be found, and Danby thanks her. The Duchess reflects that the culprit is obvious, but perhaps it is worth letting the family sort it out. Dumby is adamant that this is a chance to get rid of all the bad guys and turns to Ian. The little girl asks if it is permissible in Dribblinette for a home teacher to beat the heir. Dumby reports that she heard a certain whistle using corporal punishment on Ian, shocking the Duchess. The Duchess thanks Danby for the information, promising to sort out the rest. Dumby the little animal is worried about where Ian has gone, because he should hear good news. The baby tells the Duchess that Ian is nowhere to be found, and she assumes that he is in his room. Danby senses that this is more than just shyness and volunteers to check on Ian. It turns out that Ian did not come out even when the Duchess ordered everyone to leave the building. Ian sits alone on his bed, unaccustomed to trust after his long isolation. Danby is confident that now that the interference has been removed, only happiness awaits Ian. The little girl is determined to help Ian improve his relationships with others. Dumby approaches Ian's room, calling him over affectionately. The little animal runs down the hallway, cheerfully shouting to Ian that it knows where he is hiding. Dumby the little animal persuades Ian to come down, promising tasty things and fun. Suddenly, there is a deafening roar as she calls Ian's name. John reaches out in horror, crying out, "Little mistress!" A bright flash is reflected in Danby's eyes. She is stunned by what is happening. John recoils from the explosion that emanated from a small vial on the floor. Danby looks up at John, demanding to know what all the commotion is about.